We have.
Yep, we sure do. Okay, here we go.
For millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Then something happened which unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk. There's a silence surrounding me. I can't seem to think straight. Sit in the corner, and no one can bother me. I think I should speak now.
Why won't you talk to me?
I should speak now.
You never talk to me.
Words won't come out right.
What are you thinking?
Feel like I'm drowning.
What are you feeling?
I'm feeling weak now.
Why won't you talk to me?
But I can't show my weakness.
You never talk to me.
I sometimes wonder,
What are you thinking?
where do we go from here?
What are you feeling? Why won't you talk to
I
me?
feel like I'm drowning.
You never talk to me.
No, I can't breathe now.
What are you thinking?
We're going nowhere.
What are you feeling?
We're going nowhere.
Why won't you talk to me? You never talk to me. What are you thinking? Where do we go from here?
For millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Then something happened which unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk.
You know it's going to be a good day at church when we start with Pink Floyd and Stephen Hawking. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. I'm Reverend Sherry Kwan. I use they and she pronouns, and I'm one of the people leading worship today. We've got Orange Sky and the Ministry of Music. Reverend AJ is preaching. Adriana and Amanda are helping lead worship. We've got a great AV team, and it takes all of us, all of you. Sunday morning wouldn't be the same if you weren't here. And together we lead toward our mission. Through spiritual connection in community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. If you are new or newish here, I invite you to stop by the welcome desk, or next week, come early. Come at 10:30 during Connections to get to know us through the Inquirers series. I invite you to help us help you connect more deeply here. And if you're here today because you've got something heavy on your heart or you're worried about someone else, I invite you to connect with our pastoral care team. We've got Jane in the back there in a stole that looks like mine, or if you're joining us online, let us know in the chat. If you're here today because you've got something heavy on your heart for the world, because you suspect that violent language begets violent action, and loving language might drive us toward a loving world, you are in the right place. If you're here because the tension of the world as it is and the world as it could be, which is to say better, is a tension that you carry, you are in the right place. If you are here because you think together we can do things more powerfully and more lovingly than we can alone, you are in the right place. And to that note, I invite you to join us on Friday evening for our 3-church brainstorm. Our congregation, as well as our siblings' congregation, First Universalist downtown, and the congregation in Canandaigua, we gather once a year to start to brainstorm about all of the themes that we will cover each year. And so each of you are invited to come share what you know about music, stories, ideas, and help us deepen spiritually all together. All together. That's where we are right now. And so I invite you to settle into your seat and take a comfortable breath. As we gather this morning, we acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral and contemporary land of the Seneca people, the keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee, on whose sacred land we now worship. I invite you to join me in lighting our chalice with our unison words. And Amanda, as we start our RE program today, will light our chalice, just like, quite frankly, she lights fires in the hearts of her children. And we'll support that with our unison words. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Words like violence break the silence, come crashing into my little world. Painful to me, pierce right through me. Can't you understand? Oh, my little girl. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. Vows are spoken to be broken, feelings are intense, words are trivial, pleasures remain, so does the pain. Words are meaningless and forgettable. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. be too hard.
Waited for a second there. My name is Adriana. I use she and her pronouns, and I spent a long time being what many people would consider a nice, quiet person. Nobody knew my opinions, not even the half-baked ones. No one knew if and when I needed something. Nobody knew a thing about me unless I wanted them to, which hardly ever happened. It just felt safer to be the listener, and I was really good at it anyway, so why not keep it up? I kept my cards close because of a typical fear of exposure to criticism, but also because I had this terrible feeling that I could lose someone important if I said the wrong thing. Like suddenly they would find out how judgmental I am or how little I know about a topic that meant the world to them. So, in general, I would just let my friends take the lead in the conversations we'd have, while I hid in plain sight. I really thought that would work, and I guess it did for a while until I noticed something strange. I stopped wanting to hang out with them. I didn't understand it at first, but soon I realized it was resentment. As my friends' mistakes collected over the years, my anger gathered until I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was working so hard not to scare these people away with my god-awful flaws or opinions and needs, only to lose them in another way entirely. And isn't that why we come to church? Because here we believe that boldness and courage are key to building or rebuilding authentic relationships. We know that each individual deserves a place in the conversation.
Hello. I'd like to invite the children to come down for the time for all ages, so you can come and have a seat on the carpet, get a little closer, and be right in front for the story. So today is the start of another year of religious education programming at First Unitarian Rochester. And we're so happy to see all of the children and all of the parents. Such a big time of year for families. School starts, RE starts. There's so much going on. So today's story is about a group of porcupines. Does anybody know what a group of porcupines is called? A prickle. A prickle. That's a pretty good name, right? They're kind of prickly animals. It's easy to get poked if you get too close to a porcupine. A prickle of porcupines. So the story is about a particular prickle of porcupines that lived in a beautiful woods on the side of a big hill, and they lived together pretty peacefully. Porcupines love to like have their little small groups of 1 or 2 porcupines. They don't usually love to be all together. So this prickle of porcupines lived pretty happily because their hillside was large, and in the spring and in the summer and in the fall, there was a lot to eat. There was space to spread out in their individual dens, and they were pretty happy. They got along okay. But the winter time was a different story. And one winter in particular was so cold. It was very cold. The wind was howling and freezing, and it snowed a lot. It was just a very cold winter. And instinctively, the porcupines knew that if they stayed in their individual little dens, they were not going to do well. They might turn into porcupine popsicles. So, porcupopsicles, someone said. So, well, we'll keep working on that one. So they crawled out of their individual dens, and they all headed to the largest den, kind of a cave that was in the side of the hillside. So they all crawled into the cave, and they were already starting to feel better. All together, their collective body heat was starting to warm them up a bit, so they crawled a little closer. They crawled a little closer until they were like a porcupine pig pile. And they felt good. It was not too cold. They felt hopeful. They were going to make it through this cold, cold night. But then one porcupine turned one way, and another porcupine turned another way. And can you guess what happened? Somebody got poked hard. And that porcupine jumped out of the pile and started yelling, so upset, "Who poked me?" And they looked at a porcupine that they thought might have been near them and said, "I think it was you. I think you poked me." And then that porcupine said, "I did not poke you." And then another porcupine jumped in the argument, and another porcupine jumped in the argument. And before you knew it, quills were flying. Everyone was upset. Finally, after a while, the porcupines kind of, when you're mad for a long time, eventually you run out of energy. So finally, they all kind of just headed off to their own little spots in the cave and to nurse their wounded bodies and their hurt feelings. And they all just found a little spot away from each other in the cave that they were going to try to sleep through this cold night. But guess what happened? They started getting colder and colder, shaking and shivering. They were so cold. And finally, one of the porcupines said, "I think we need to figure something out." And that porcupine said, "I have an idea. Why don't we make some agreements about how we're going to be when we're together?" And that's something that we do in our Unitarian Universalist community. We make covenants. We make agreements about how we're going to act, how we're going to behave, how we're going to take care of each other when we're together in a group. And that's something that the children will do in their classes this morning. They'll think about the covenant, their classroom covenant, to help guide their year together. So, the other porcupines thought, well, maybe that will work. It's worth a try. So they started talking, thinking about what each of them needed, what would be important to have their group go well. And finally, they had a covenant and some ideas about how to be together. And especially, they thought about what to do if something went wrong. If someone got poked, if someone got upset, because, they knew it was going to happen eventually. And they needed to have that in their covenant. What would they do if someone got hurt? So, guided by their new porcupine covenant, they started to move a little closer together. Maybe they could trust, maybe they'd be safe, until once again they were in a little porcupine pig pile. And one porcupine turned one way, and another porcupine turned another way, and what happened, do you think? Poke! Somebody got poked. And that porcupine that got poked remembered the covenant, and they said, they didn't jump out of the pig pile. They said, "Ouch! Oh!" And another porcupine that was nearby said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was that me who poked you? I didn't mean to." And another porcupine who was nearby, who thought maybe it was them who did it, said, "Me too. I will try again next time to take better care." And so, with this new covenant to guide them, knowing what to do if something went wrong, knowing how they could treat each other in order to keep everybody feeling okay, they went into a cold winter, but they made it. They were able to stay close and cozy. Nobody turned into a porcupine popsicle. And in the spring, they were able to come out of their cave into the nice, warming weather together. May this story unfold in your hearts until we are together again. The children can stand up and follow me out to their classes while all of us sing.
We bless you on your journey through, from sheltering arms to the wide sky blue, with your joyful jumps and your
very grateful to Orange Sky for their music leadership this morning and for saying yes to my request to have not one, but two Depeche Mode songs featured in today's service, which is why there's not one, but two parts of a sermon, the same length as a normal sermon. Don't get too worried that I'm up here this early in the service, but it'll come in two parts. And the first part, of course, based on that first Depeche Mode song they did from 1990, Depeche Mode sang the lyrics, "Words are meaningless and forgettable." Their song, "Enjoy the Silence," is a meditation on the shortcomings of words and silence, and the shortcomings of words and language, and the virtues of silence. Feelings are intense, pleasure and pain, experiences are real, but words can fail to communicate the full reality of those experiences. It's often said about preaching, though it applies generally, I think, they won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Which makes sense, I think, from an evolutionary perspective, and, similar to Stephen Hawking in the Pink Floyd song this morning, said, somewhere along the way, we started talking. Feelings and experiences are much older than that, much more hardwired parts of our bodies linked to a more ancient common ancestor to living creatures on Earth. But at some point, we started talking and developing the use of language, and that tool has enabled so much of our imagination, our creativity, our culture, and our community. But there's the lyric, again, from Depeche Mode, "Words can only do harm." Now, saying that they can only do harm is maybe a little bit hyperbolic on the part of the lyricist. One of the things that leads me to think that the song is meant slightly tongue-in-cheek. Certainly it expresses an authentic perspective about the power of silence and the failure of words, but it's not necessarily presented as 100% foolproof life advice. But words can do harm? Absolutely, we know this. As in the story we just heard from Amanda, the prickle of porcupines, right? When we are hurt, if our reaction is to get angry and lash out and be aggressive about that, we may have been justifiably hurt, but how we choose to express that can lead to harm. Now, besides the realm of social interaction and the power of words to cause harm, or the power of words, or the impotence of words, their failure to really articulate the fullest truth of our experience, there is an important piece for theology here for me, and that in this praise of silence and the rejection of words, I find a humility or an agnosticism about our words, our language that we use, that I find helpful for navigating our Unitarian Universalist shared value of pluralism. Not only do we proclaim that there is no one-size-fits-all religion or theology or spiritual practice for all people at all times, but we acknowledge that each and every religion or theology or spiritual practice that does exist, it exists in the form of human words, of culture, of a way that we have put it together to try and communicate it to one another and try to pass it on down the generations. But to the extent that you do that, every time we humans do that, we are taking that ineffable experience of spirituality and religion, and we are moving it into the world of the concrete, of the finite. We are making it a little bit smaller and a little bit different so that we can talk about it. So it's not just this is all a bad thing, but it is an impact of what happens when we move from the original spiritual experience to talking about it. So John Hick, an English Christian philosopher, writes in The Myth of Religious Superiority that all the world's religions speak in their different ways of a limitlessly important reality that both transcends the material universe and is also present within it. This ultimate is in itself beyond the scope of human description and understanding. In the words of medieval Christian philosopher Thomas Aquinas, God surpasses every form that our intellect reaches. Now, this is something that you can find across religions and across cultures. In Judaism, there is Ein Sof, the infinite, or in Islam, Al-Haq, the real. Those concepts held in contrast to the infinite reality as revealed in our limited human language, thought, and forms. The Jewish philosopher Maimonides from the medieval era speaks of essence versus the manifestation of God. In Hinduism, There is Nirguna Brahman, which is Brahman without attributes and beyond all human description, and that's contrasted with Saguna Brahman, the same reality as humanly known in the realm, as the realm of the gods, but humanly known. Hick writes that in our awareness of anything, the very act of cognition itself affects the form in which we are conscious of it. And so the language that is available to each of us shapes how we understand that infinite, and it changes what it is into something that we have put into words, which again is essential for communicating the idea from one person to another. So little surprise then that mystics and sages the world over spend so much time in silent contemplation and meditation. Because when we find that oneness, when we find all we've ever wanted, all we've ever needed, in the words of the song, when we find the deepest, most grounded parts of our being, we find communion with that which is larger, it's reasonable, it's understandable to want to remain there and enjoy the silence. Because trying to move from there into language, into articulation, only works to reduce and make smaller what is an ineffable, infinite experience. But again, it's not just about deep mystical experiences, but our very human experiences, our very everyday experiences, I should say, come into play. Enjoy the silence, of course, is at the end of the day a love song, right? When I tell my wife I love her, as powerful as that word love is in our English language, and as much as I might elaborate or wax poetic about what it means to me and to us, the word fails to fully capture the depth of feeling and experience that I'm pointing at. In Buddhist teachings, there's the analogy of the finger pointing to the moon. The idea is that the moon represents enlightenment, nirvana, that infinite reality that is being pointed towards, and the finger is the teachings of the Buddha that point the way. And the caution is, the important thing to remember about this analogy is that you don't want to mistake the finger for the moon itself. This understanding of the limits of words, of language, of anything we try to do to communicate the deep religious truths we experience to one another is foundational to at least my understanding of our religious pluralism. Because when we understand that religions are various languages, they are different attempts at taking the human experience of the spiritual, of the divine, and reducing it into the realm of human thought and language. And yes, reducing it, but doing so that it can be understood and communicated. If we understand that, then it becomes crystal clear that there is no one size fits all. That's actually the reason why we don't think there's one religion or at least for me, that's the reason why I don't think there is one religion for all people in all times. Just as there is no one language for all people. I would never say every human being from now until the end of time should speak English because it's the best language that there could possibly be. There's no way of establishing that for any human language, and therefore, no way of establishing that for any religion. And then it becomes impossible, or at least very difficult, to base your religious community, as most versions of Christianity have done historically, in a shared religious language, in a shared creedal statement, in the idea that, well, we all believe this one thing. And again, for religious communities that do that and want to go there, I'm not casting any shade on that. But I, as a Unitarian Universalist and as a pluralist, find spiritual community with others who have that pluralistic perspective. And so we wouldn't be able to write down a creed of this is the statement that we all believe theologically. And yet we find ourselves here in religious community, connecting with the infinite and with each other, using our different language from each of us to understand and talk about our experiences, but each of us still responding to a faith with love at the center, a faith that asks more of us than to simply contemplate the divine magnificence beyond all words in silence and solitude, but a faith that asks us to actually live out our response to that infinite love in words and deeds. So we do not bind ourselves together in a common agreement to a particular theological statement, but that doesn't mean that we don't say anything at all about why we gather. Like Amanda said, our congregations can and do articulate covenants, which range from brief statements, similar to a mission statement, to a more comprehensive and specific behavioral covenant, outlining how we promise to behave with one another and how we will navigate breaches of that trust. And here too, with covenants, we can find the distinction between the thing that we're pointing at and the finger that is pointing there. Reverend Erica Barron uses the analogy of a map and the terrain that it describes to help get at this idea for covenant. She writes that the words of a covenant are more like a map. They help us understand covenant. They help us talk to each other about it. But the covenant itself is like the terrain described by the map, with all its dimensionality, ranging from muddy swamps to majestic peaks. It can never be completely captured in words. So we have this tension between the reality beyond words that we are trying to talk about, whether it's the big ultimate reality or the reality of our community relationships and how we want to be with one another. We have that reality, and then we have the words that we use to talk about them, our personal theological languages, our covenants written down as to how we want to be. And so this irony is inherent in the Depeche Mode song, where they sing the lyrics. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm. But I have to assume and hear the singer as winking at us when they sing, because they are singing words to express that idea, right? The point isn't that words are terrible and we should never use them and we should just all be silent. But it's to have that humility and that agnosticism of knowing we have words to use, but we want to be careful and cautious about them. So later on in this service, we'll hear a different song from Depeche Mode from their 2005 album with a slightly different, perhaps more mature take on the role of language. But this humility cautioned by Enjoy the Silence is something that I hope we carry with us, because even as there is value in naming the truth and writing down a shared intention, there is that danger of idolizing our own words, that danger of thinking that if we can just get the right language figured out, if we can say this the right way, if we can wordsmith ourselves into perfection, then we can save ourselves. But that is not where our salvation or our liberation lies. That would be taking the finger for the moon itself. So before we move more into that second song and all of the thoughts we'll have about that, let us linger in this world of silence and the heart connections that can be made without and beyond the use of words. We'll move into the pastoral prayer and the pastoral section of our liturgy. But as we do that, I want to invite up the pastoral care team members. These are folks who are part of this team that provides pastoral care to our congregation and to our community. And we have new members to commission to join. So anyone who is a member of the pastoral care team, new or coming along, or continuing in their service, please come forward now. I see Jane and Mary. And in particular, we lift up and welcome our three newest members, Susan Dias, Marianne Gawker, and Ray Morath. So I present you to the members and friends of the First Unitarian Church of Rochester and commission you to provide pastoral care to this body. At its simplest, lay pastoral care means to journey alongside someone. It means that you are the presence of First Unitarian in someone's life in a moment of need. It is beyond being a friend and a fellow congregant, and it is made possible by healthy boundaries of time and space. Know that you provide this care in relationship with one another and with the accountability and support of the ministers of this congregation. And I'll invite Reverend Sherry up to help me with the covenanting now. So if you will covenant now with this congregation, if you, the team members, will make these promises. Will you remember that you do this work as a team and will seek counsel as needed? Will you promise to maintain healthy boundaries and confidentiality? Will you understand that it is not your responsibility to fix problems, but to offer presence and compassion? Do all you commit to accompany this community and its members in their moments of crisis and sorrow, while also celebrating their joys? If so, please say, "We will."
And to the members and friends of First Unitarian, will you commit to supporting these pastoral care associates in their ministry? Will you commit to reaching out, to continuing to care for and be cared for by this community? If so, please say, "We will." We will.
May you be blessed as you are a blessing to this community, and thank you for your loving service to our church. You may be seated. Thank you.
Nowhere is the tension between the necessity and inadequacy of words as present as it is in prayer, in this posture of humility and hope that we carry collectively. To this paradox and tension, my colleague, Reverend Hannah Roberts-Villeneuve, offers us this meditation. All the questions today are the wrong size, either so big I get lost inside them, or so small that they slip away in the face of life's realities. What role does violence have in movements for social change? Too big, unanswerable. Should I point out the contradictions in her politics on that Facebook thread? Too small, pettiness off the charts. I keep moving through this house, wishing for a question that fits. Is private property a sin? Too big. Please stop being like this. Is it too extra to paint the kitchen a color called siesta? Too small. It's literally just paint. Surely the next room of today will have something that's just right. Is this country worth saving? Too big. And dear Lord, this is why nobody wants to invite you to parties. Can I patronize a McDonald's that's flying its flag half-staff for that guy? Too small. This is not the way, honey. Dear God, show me something that is just right. Any question that feels worth asking today. God heaves a sigh and pinches the bridge of their nose. This is why you have a body, a home, a place to somehow contain an existential crisis alongside a need for beauty, to somehow contain the love that surpasses alongside the finer and rougher points of living with other people. Your body can hold the questions without breaking, so let it. Here in our collective body, we hold the questions without breaking. And our embodiment of prayer of all that lives unanswered within our hearts happens nearly every week with this shared ritual in which we bring what's on our hearts and we lay it on the altar of community and spirit. We, in an embodied sense, by moving forward, saying aloud in the chat, lighting a candle, or being here for one another, we honor the complexities of life. We bring to mind whatever grief or growth or gratitude is alive within our individual lives, and we make it communal, held in our body collective. So online, I invite you to share in the chat. And here in the sanctuary, I invite first our newest pastoral care associates to come forward to take the flame from our chalice and to light the candles on our community altars. Each of you are invited to come forward to light a candle or to raise your hand and have an usher bring a candle to you, or simply to hold firmly in your seat and to know, no, pastoral care associates, you're on your way. As for the rest of you, whether you choose to come forward or not, you have a role in this ritual. You are part of our body that does not break despite unanswerable questions. We light candles for so much among us. Today, we lift up the life of Patricia Ann Sexton Oberg and member of this congregation, Michael Oberg. His mother, Patricia, passed away this past week. We lift up in light and love Janice Booth Stanton, member of this congregation, who passed away on Thursday morning. Her memorial will be held at Whitehaven Chapel on Thursday at 1 p.m. May we all now share in this ritual of community care. May this body witness to one another's hearts. You may now come forward. May all these flames kindled and the fires that burn silently in our hearts, all that we hold for ourselves, for each other, and for the world, be held in this community and be held by a love that holds us all always. Amen.
Talking like we used to do. It was always me and you, shipping up and shipping out. Check me in and check me out. Do you like walking in the rain? When you think of love, do you think of pain? You can tell me what you see. I will choose what I believe. Hold on, darling. This body is yours. This body is yours and mine. Well, hold on, my darling. This mess was yours. Now your mess is mine. See you in the marketplace, walking around at 8 a.m. Got 2 hours before my flight. Luck be on my side tonight. Isn't that I feel so strong? The reason that I'm hanging on. I know you gave me all that time. Did I give
body is yours, this body is yours and mine. Hold on, my darling, this mess was yours, now your mess is tell me sorry for the mess. Hey, I don't mind. You're talking in your sleep, out of time. Well, you still make sense to me. Hey, the mess is mine.
All that our church is and all that our church does is made possible by the time, talent, and treasure that we give to our shared mission. Members and friends support this congregation financially through recurring giving, and on Sundays, we also give through our shared collection. As part of the spiritual practice of generosity, 50 cents of every dollar given now to our offering will go to the Unitarian Universalist Association's Disaster Relief Fund. Every year, Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country face climate disasters, including fires, floods, hurricanes, and more. A healthy disaster relief fund allows our association to support congregations, their members, and their community partners to recover, rebuild, and improve climate resiliency when disaster strikes. Using Church Center is the easiest way to give, but if you aren't set up with the app yet, you can also give by texting GIVE and the amount you would like to give to the number on the screen or in the offering baskets that will now be passed. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, the offering will now be given and humbly received.
Precious and fragile things need special handling. My God, what have we done to you? We'd always try to share the tenderest of care. Now look what we have put you through. Things get damaged, things get broken. I thought we'd manage with words left unspoken, left us so brittle. There was so little left to give. Angels with silver wings shouldn't know suffering. I wish I could take the pain for you. If God has a master plan, then He with your eyes he's seeing through. Things get damaged, things get broken. I thought we'd manage, but words left unspoken left us so brittle. There was so little left to give. I pray you learn to trust and have faith in both of us, and keep room in your hearts for two. Yeah. Things get damaged, things get broken. I thought we'd manage, but words left unspoken left us so brittle. There was so little left to give. So little left to give. Precious and fragile things, oh, they need special handling.
Words left unspoken left us so brittle, there was so little left to give. So without denying what may be true and original from, maybe true and valuable from the earlier song, Enjoy the Silence, Precious points out that when we have feelings and words to share, but we don't share them, we can do as much, if not more, harm than we do when we use feeble words. Just like Adriana shared in her opening words, there is a cost always, I think, to holding back our authentic thoughts and feelings, whether we see them as flaws or needs that we ought not to have. If I don't tell people how I feel about them, they'll never know. If I don't tell other people when I am hurt or that they have crossed a boundary, they'll never know. They'll have no way of making amends, seeking repentance, or being in right relationship. If I don't risk saying something that might turn out to be inappropriate or harmful, then no one has the chance to call me in or call me out about that and help me unlearn something. Putting what is on my heart into words may be difficult, painful even, and it may lead to more conversations and greater complications, but to not do this can leave the emotions, the feelings, the knowledge, truth stuck in my heart and in my mind, leading me to become rigid, brittle, and fragile. Or maybe I don't say something because I think it's obvious. Everybody knows that. It doesn't need to be said, or at least it doesn't need to be said by me. And as with all things, there is nuance and balance. There is much wisdom in asking yourself before speaking, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? But all I'm saying is to not forget that sometimes the answer is yes. It's maybe more necessary to say things sometimes than we think if we think something is just obvious. Now, the absolutely necessary flip side to this encouragement of sharing what is on our hearts is that I also have to be able to receive how others respond to my words. Communication has to be a two-way street. I have to be able to listen deeply, hearing without rejecting, and staying grounded to the deepest part of myself and aligned with my values if the other person shares something that is difficult for me to hear, difficult for me to process. Now, all of this is part of the reason why we have covenants in our UU congregations, whether it's the ones in our small group ministries and soul matters groups, a covenant in a leadership group like the Board of Trustees doing important and weighty work, or the lay pastoral care team, which covenants amongst itself for mutual support and to understand how they will do it, or the covenant we did together with them this morning in the commissioning. Our tradition stresses the need to take time to talk about and come to a shared vision for why we are gathering in any particular group, how we will treat one another, and what we will do when we fall short of our highest aspirations, as is only so human to do. This is a centuries-old practice going back on the Unitarian side of our tradition. I think it's an even more ancient human practice, essentially. But the idea of covenant is deep in our roots, going back to the English Puritans who colonized New England in the 17th century. They wrote down how they organized their religious communities and how they understood them to be in relationship within their churches and between them. And they wrote this down in a document called the Cambridge Platform in 1648. Now, one piece of that legacy is the system of independent, autonomous congregations that set their own bylaws, elect their own leaders, and call their own ministers. But an equally important legacy from the Cambridge Platform is this concept of covenant. And the idea that a covenant or a voluntary agreement is the basic means by which a local church is formed. In the words of the Cambridge Platform, it was as simple as a real agreement and consent of a company of faithful persons to meet constantly together in the congregation for the public worship of God and their mutual edification. In the more modern parlance of Vance Joy, it may be saying that your mess is my mess, saying that we collectively own our messes together. And other than a more expansive sense of what worship means and what religious language is available to us beyond the word God, I think this statement from the Cambridge Platform rings pretty true for how Unitarian Universalists come together today. We meet together regularly for public worship and for mutual edification, for a mutual benefit, and for calling each other back to our highest values when we stray. And again, we find this tension between the power of silence and the need to put things into words. This is present even in this nearly 400-year-old document. On the one hand, the Puritans stressed that the more express and plain the covenant is, the more fully it puts us in mind of our mutual duty and stirreth us up to it. But they also acknowledged that covenants have been entered into not only expressly by word of mouth, but by sacrifice, by hand, writing, and seal, and also sometimes by silent consent, without any writing or expression of words at all. This is to say that sometimes the covenant is made explicitly by being written down, and at other times it operates as an implicit covenant, one that is lived out in the behavior, the values, the sacrifices that are made by the members of the church community as it lives in the hearts of the church community. So let me turn to you, and this is more a question for folks who are maybe not your first Sunday here, but here at First Unitarian, do we have a covenant? I'm seeing some nods. Yes, thumbs up. Okay. Do we have an explicit or an implicit covenant? Raise your hand for implicit. Raise your hand for explicit. Okay, good. So, can anyone point to me to where one would find that explicit covenant? Yes, it's in Williams Gallery on sort of the space of the wall opposite from where the elevators are. There is a covenant written up, and it lives on the walls of our building. Now, how many of you did not know that that was there? Okay, actually, fewer. I think it was about half and half at the first service, and I'm saying maybe slightly fewer hands here. So that is encouraging, and that is good to see. We do have this explicit covenant, and the truth is, there's always an implicit covenant. Whether or not there is one explicitly, there is that sense of we come together. It is sort of the culture of the community. If you've heard of the idea of the implicit curriculum of an educational institution or a place, it's that implied, that cultural piece that is communicated, even if it's not intentional or even if it's not set down in writing. Now, one of the things about that covenant that's on the wall, the two things that strike me about it. One is that it is clear that it's clear to me that it's from a time of ministerial transition. Now, it's unclear whether it's from the last ministerial transition in 2016 to 2019, or if it's from the one before that in 2002 to 2004. So from my perspective and my experience, and I will say, I didn't know that that was on the wall until I was here for a few years. So I discovered that, oh, we have a covenant that is written down, in fact. So we do have some words on a paper, and it is up in the congregation, but I don't know how fully that particular articulation is alive in the congregation, right? In a similar way that our mission is alive. Most, I think, if not all members can recite the mission, partly because it is short and sweet and has those 3 words of listen, open, serve, but also because we say it every single Sunday in worship. And so it is alive and used in the congregation. So there's this danger, I think, of the covenant being left unspoken, leaving us brittle, as the song warns. But the good news is that we are underway to get more explicit about our covenant, to do an updating of our covenant. Of course, covenants are a living document. They are subject to updating and changes. We are a people who value transformation and change and growth. And so over the next 4 Sundays during Connection, your congregational covenant team for 2025 will be leading a process for generating conversation and ideas and content for what we might want to articulate in our covenant explicitly, right? We'll be asking, what do we feel is implicitly in our covenant? What do we feel, for those of us who are familiar with what is in the explicit written covenant, what feels important to bring forward now into this current time? So during Connection for the next 4 Sundays, this team of Barbara Gowinski, John Horn, Grace Carswell, and myself will be leading small group conversations and discussions. So we are limiting it to 30 participants each Sunday, so we can have 3 small breakout rooms. It is the same program, the same process every single Sunday. So if you do it on one Sunday, you don't need to do it again. And if you miss getting in time for the first one, there will be other opportunities to participate. And we're going to offer it online as well at a time to be determined. This process of having conversations about our covenant, what we think it is implicitly, and what we want to lift up explicitly, this will lead to a draft covenant and a vote at the congregational meeting that's going to happen in December. And again, lest we mistake the finger, the written covenant, for the moon, we would do well to focus in our conversations more on the essence and intent behind the idea of covenant than the exact language we end up with. This will not be an intense wordsmithing process to get the words exactly right. We are trying to get at something a little more immaterial and relational. As Reverend Erica Barron reminds, we must remember that the map is not the same thing as the terrain. The terrain is the real work, the real substance of the covenant. It's the conversations, the relationships, the intention to sit down and say what is on our hearts, to articulate a shared vision for how we will be with one another, how we will stay at the table, navigating the tension and conflict that naturally arises when we fail to meet our own standards, as is only human to do. Whether we have a document that we can point to as our covenant or not, the covenant is only alive when we engage fully, truthfully, bravely, messily in the real grit of human relationship and of authentic community. This is the liberative practice of Unitarian Universalism. This is what can help us all get free together when we bring our separate and individual voices together in community. May it be so.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Gorgeous. If you're trying to figure out how to go deeper in harmony in this congregation, I invite you to come back next week early at 10:30 for Connections, and in particular, if you're new or newish, to join us for our Inquirers series. If you are, like me, in danger of sometimes confusing the finger with the moon and the arms with the floor, we want to help out while cleaning to stack our chairs. Yeah, people were like, where are you going with this? Chairs without arms get stacked together, chairs with arms get stacked together. And as we close our worship together, I invite you to join me in our unison words as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the lighted truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May we keep talking, keep trusting, and keep each other's trust, enjoying the silence while speaking and acting with love at the center. May it be so. Go in peace, and I love you.